It should be up and running. And I'm going to start the tapes and get my notebook out. Take notes. You want a drink of water or anything?
No. I want to get this over with.
Well, this is a good thing. This is not going to be a big thing, though, I promise you. This is my computer. This is what I use every day at work.
Okay.
Well, it's not taking. This isn't taking a picture or anything. This is just where a lot of my notes are.
Okay.
So basically what we did was, Sarah took a lot of those pictures. Oh, look at this. Sarah took a lot of those pictures and she put them on the computer. And there's a bunch of them. This is just a few. She got from either you or Aunt Mickey or Cousin Diane. And they're going to be all cleaned up.
Yeah, it's nice of Grandma Sarah.
Okay. So you know, I mean, those are. I might actually even. Oh, is that Lydia? Are these pictures of Lydia?
Uh-huh.
She's cute.
Very cute.
She's really cute. Okay. Sarah, did you see the pictures? I gotta show you these pictures of Sarah Rowan. Was with Chloe and Phoebe at Joyce. You know the Rowans,
Yes.
friends Joyce. Their house, and they just had a litter of black labs, little puppies.
Oh yeah, I remember them going there. Yeah.
And did you hear the story about Phoebe or about Chloe? Chloe fell in love with one of the little black labs.
Yeah.
So she walked over to Joyce, and she kind of like got her attention, and then she said, "Excuse me, puppy lady."
Oh.
She said, "How much is one of these puppies?"
Puppy lady.
So Joyce said, "About $50, which is not,
Yeah.
much over. I think they're over $500.
Yeah.
And Chloe thought for a second. She said, "I don't have that much,
Oh.
but let me go talk to my parents."
Oh. Isn't the puppy lady? Oh, I wish I had been there.
Puppy lady. It's just so funny. Okay, so basically what I want, this is in a little bit of an order, but for the most part, I just want to have a conversation with you about the family. I want to start with what you remember from your grandparents. If it's not a lot, that's fine, but moving on to great-grandma Sarah and...
The only thing I remember of my grandparents,
Do you remember their names, first of all?
the only grandparent I remember is Wolf Steinberg, who was my grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
And he, after my grandmother passed away, he moved in with us and lived with us.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I remember him so well. And he lived with us until he passed away.
And he was your grandfather.
That was Grandpa Julius's father.
Grandpa Julius's father. Was he a lot like Grandpa Julius?
No, he was a very, very stern, serious man. And when he moved in, he was like the head of the household.
Right
And
away.
He treated Grandpa Julius like
Like his kid, kind of?
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
What?
And it was kind of interesting. He just ran everything while he lived with us.
About
But
how
it
old?
was friendly. It was friendly because he was stern, but he was a kind person.
Yeah, it was still family.
Yeah, and I really cared about him.
How old was he approximately when he moved in?
Um,
And
it's a
then
good
how old were,
question.
I guess, how old were you approximately when you moved in?
How old was I when he moved in? I probably was like in the 6 or 7 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I do remember him.
Yeah, definitely.
But you know what? I could find out when he passed away, and I could figure out how old he was.
Oh, that's
then.
all right. I'm not worried about those kinds of,
Oh,
those
yeah,
kinds of
okay.
specifics yet. And he was married before he moved in, but your grandmother passed away.
Right, they
before
had
he
their
moved.
own home,
Mm-hmm.
and when she passed away, he gave up his own home and moved in with us.
And where are they from? Do you remember originally?
I read someplace in Europe. I'm not sure. I think maybe Poland or close to Germany, something like that.
And then they came to the United States, settled.
They didn't come to the United States first. They came and they settled in Detroit, Michigan.
Mm.
And why they settled in Detroit, Michigan, I don't know, maybe he had a job then or something. And that's where Grandpa Julius was born.
Oh, in Detroit.
Yeah.
And then they came down to Toledo.
And then they came to Toledo.
Do you
I don't
remember?
know the circumstances of why they moved to Toledo. It probably had with him getting a job, and maybe part of the family was here at the time. I don't know.
Do you remember what he did for a living, or Wolf Steinberg? Is it?
Wolf Steinberg.
Yeah.
I think he was a tailor by trade, but by the time I knew him, he was not. He was retired.
Mm.
He was in his 70s, that's for sure.
When he moved in with you, or when he passed away?
When he moved in with us.
And okay, so then that's Grandpa Julius's, great Grandpa Julius's side. And then, do you remember anything from Sarah's side?
Sarah's side, I don't remember because I was very young when she passed away. She was a breadwinner because her father died when she was like 14. And trying to think. Wait, I'm trying to think. I know he died when she was very young. When her father died when she was very young. I'm trying to think. Now, what was the question you're asking?
About great grandma Sarah's mom and dad.
Okay, I don't, because he died so very young.
Yeah.
I don't remember him at all.
Okay.
And I have a faint, I might have been like 4 years old when she
Oh
passed
my
away.
God. Yeah.
So I have just a faint reaction. I never had a picture of her.
Yeah.
I've been always asking different relatives if they have a picture,
Ah,
but I still haven't gotten a picture.
maybe we'll be able to dig one up.
That would be great.
Sarah's been up in basements and in boxes. and
Yeah,
it's
but
just-
I don't think she'd get it that way. The only way is at the end of her life, she lived with my Aunt Lily, who was the youngest one in the family, and she probably had all the books and the pictures and everything.
Aunt Lily was Sarah's sister.
Yeah, she was the youngest in the family.
Okay. Actually, that's a great thing that I'd love to know. Did Julius have brothers and sisters?
Yeah. Now, yes, Julius was the second one in his family. Philip was the oldest.
Oh.
And then came Julius. And then came Harry. Harry. And then, they had two sisters. Anne and Sarah. And then came, I think, Max and then Hyman.
Okay. Well, it doesn't. I don't need to. I'm just mostly curious about whether or not he had brothers and sisters.
Yeah, he had many brothers and sisters.
Yeah, a few.
Yeah. There wasn't unusual in those days, big families.
Mm-hmm. Did you know them?
Yes, I knew all of them. I remember Uncle Philip.
Mm-hmm.
I remember very faintly Harry. But my favorites were the two his youngest brothers, Max and Hyman. Uncle Max and his wife, Aunt Lil, they lived in Columbus for a while, by the way. She did, after my Uncle Max passed away. But they never had children. And when I was very little, I might have been like 2 or 3 years old, Aunt Lil and Uncle Max came to Grandma Sarah and wanted to adopt me because because she said, after all, you have all these other children, and we don't have any, and we could give her a good home, and besides, they were very well to do.
Uh-huh.
So what she did, she took me down, she took me and dressed me, got me a beautiful outfit, and then brought me back home and showed Grandma Sarah how she, would be dressed so beautifully, and I would have everything in this world. And Grandma Sarah, of course, wouldn't hear of it. But can you imagine how different it would have been had I been adopted?
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't have ever talked.
No.
I moved to Columbus, and of course, then I was her child.
You would have been a Columbus
That's right.
person.
Right.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
And
In fact, she married a man by the name of Broner, and they had this home in Columbus. And when Aunt Lil moved away, she sold the house to good friends of your parents. You'd have to ask your mom their name.
Really? So it's all
really
connected.
A coincidence.
That is a real coincidence.
Isn't that something?
I never heard that story before.
Yeah.
Do other people know that story?
Oh, sure, Aunt Ann for sure remembers it, and Aunt Mickey would remember it.
And how come they wanted you and not one of the other sisters?
Well, because I was at that stage. I was at...
You're young enough.
Yeah.
That's so funny. That's a great story. What about Grandma Sarah's brothers and sisters?
Okay. Uncle Sam was the oldest.
Mm-hmm.
And then Uncle Joe. And then Uncle Ed. And then Grandma Sarah. And then Uncle Bill, who was that was Maudette's father.
Oh, okay. So that's how Maudette comes into it.
That's right.
Okay.
And then Aunt Lily, who was the youngest.
Maudette had children.
Yes.
Who were Maudette's children?
Well, one's named, I think they call him Willie now, after Uncle Bill.
Okay.
And the daughter's name...
But how was Maudette related with the family? How do I know her name more than any of the others?
Well, first of all, she's my first cousin.
Right.
But she's Uncle Bob's age. So she's from a different it's a strange thing.
Yeah, it's a different generation with the same age. Yeah. Okay. Do you remember? And they're all from.
They're from.
Great grandma's mom and dad were both from Europe, also. Somewhere in Europe, also.
Yeah, but that comes. Now I have to show you this because this will tell you exactly where Grandma Sarah came from in Russia.
Oh, okay.
I took out my birth certificate.
Oh yeah, I want to see that. That's a big birth certificate.
This is my graduation from high school.
That's unbelievable.
You want to see my marriage certificate?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
So you were out of high school 5 years when you got married.
Yeah. But this is what's interesting about it. Oh, this Meyer Frank was a first cousin to Grandpa Julius, and Fred Christen was my boss. I worked for him.
What were you doing at the time?
I was a bookkeeper, Fred Christen's son.
Okay.
At sheet metal and, isn't that something?
That is really something else. This was after the ketubah was signed?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I had a ketubah.
No. Can I see?
Okay, now wait a second. What was this?
That's the-
This is from something else. Oh, this is Joel. Oh, this is interesting, okay. Grandpa Julius, and it tells our address at the time where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
I was really delivered in the hospital by William Shapiro, my uncle.
Oh. Is that any relation to Marvin Shapiro?
That would be his uncle also.
That's his uncle also, okay.
Okay. Here's Grandma Sarah was born in Chisinau, Russia, which is interesting to know.
I would say so, yeah.
And she was 30 years old when I was born, and Grandpa Julius was 40. They were 10 years apart. And then he lived 10 years after her.
At the time you were born, he was a mail carrier.
That's right.
Oh, Julius was born in Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah, but he's really born in Detroit.
No,
But
he was really
he was very young when he...
Wow, that's something else.
I can't figure out what this is.
Looks like a birth certificate.
What is this?
Certificate of live birth.
Oh, it's for Uncle Papa.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to tell. Riverside Hospital. It's really hard to tell.
Oh, this is...
Oh no, this is Joel David Swartz. This is Uncle Joel's birth certificate.
Oh, I see. Oh, this is Papa's.
Oh, Papa's mom was Goldie?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that. Oh, that's neat. Alright, hold on a second. I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
I think so too. It's kind of interesting to look through all this stuff.
Very interesting. First of all, I think that we could probably...
Oh, this is interesting. Oh, and this is a witness. Oh, and you know who else signed the witness? Is Jack Burke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Is that funny? I haven't looked at this in so long, Benji, that...
Oh, this is a marriage certificate
Yeah.
for you and Papa.
Which is a-
1939, right.
Yeah. Okay, now I can put all this away. But I thought that was interesting about the one,
It's very interesting.
the Keshin of Russia. Her grandma, she was only 3 years old when she came here. And Uncle Bill and Aunt Lily were born in Toledo.
They were younger than.
Yeah, I told you.
Right. So we've covered Julius's parents, and then who's in the picture there in the corner?
That's Grandpa Julius and Grandma Sarah.
And Grandma Sarah. Does
Yeah.
Sarah have that picture?
Yes, she
Okay.
has that picture.
Okay, good.
The reason it's out here is because Jennifer and your dad came over and they were taking all the pictures out, so that's why that's out.
Okay, so and we covered Grandma Sarah's, great Grandma Sarah's parents as much as we remember.
Yeah.
And so now I think we should move on to great grandfather Julius first, and then Sarah, and then down the line. Does that work for you?
Whatever you say.
What's your earliest memory of your father?
That's a good question. I only remember him just working all the time.
Mm-hmm.
He really was a hard worker.
Yeah. Do you remember what his earliest jobs were? Was he before mail
He was
carrier?
always a mail carrier.
Oh, always a mail carrier for a lot of years?
For a lot of years. And then when Uncle Joe went into the auto parts business, he worked for him in the office. He did all his bookkeeping and took care of everything in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he did until he retired.
Until he retired, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But you don't. But for the most part, he wasn't. You picture him working.
Yeah,
most of your
right,
childhood.
right. I don't remember him too much about home. He was, I'm trying to think of different things.
My dad used to tell me stories how he was, he liked to have a lot of circulation in the house and the windows were open all
Yeah,
the time.
that's true. Oh, that's true.
Before it was known that that might be a good thing even.
Oh, that's true, because when we moved from Bancroft to Franklin Avenue, one of the big things he liked about the school, Fulton School, had an open air.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, it's funny that you should bring it up because I forgot. I remember that I had a regular robe with a hood and sheepskin slippers because it was an open air school. It was really cold, as you can imagine, in the wintertime. And at noontime, before lunch, they served hot cocoa every morning to the students.
Uh-huh.
And that was when I was in the, I think it was in the first and second grade.
So when you say open air, it was literally, was there a roof over your head?
It was a big brick building. It's been torn down and replaced by a new building now. But it was a big brick building. But I remember even the steps and everything were wooden. The floors and the steps. And when you left the building, when school was out, they sang marching songs and patriotic songs, and you marched four abreast out of the school.
Really?
Yeah. It was kind of interesting.
So if it was, but there was a roof over your head.
Oh,
so
it
if
was a regular, heavy, a big building.
Regular building, but open air meaning that it was.
The windows were open.
Oh, okay, I see.
The windows were open. It was like a fresh air school.
And he used to. My dad would tell me that he used to fish. He liked to go to the docks and fish. That he was working. He used to work out. He used to lift things.
Yes, that's true.
What was he lifting? What, like?
He had regular barbells.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he was essentially working out.
He was working out, and well, his biggest love was bicycle riding.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He had friends in the neighborhood. Really, they were cousins, male cousins of his. They used to bike ride as far as Detroit, Michigan.
Come on.
Honest.
Would they have to spend the night? I guess.
No, they would ride back. I mean, that's the way it was told to me.
Right.
That was supposed to.
I guess it probably is possible, but that means that he was a serious bike
A
rider.
very serious.
He wasn't, lollygagging.
Yeah. And the same thing with, of course, he always walked as a mail carrier, and he continued walking even after he gave up.
He was in very good shape.
Extremely good shape.
Yeah.
And he died well in his 90s, so you knew he was in good shape.
Yeah. Was he stern? Like you mentioned before, that his father was more
Very stern,
but was different than Julius.
Yeah, different. Grandpa Julius was kind of eccentric in a lot of things.
Yeah. I think I'd be really interested to know more detail about what eccentric means.
Well, first of all, I think with the first 5 children, he was fine. But when the children got to be a bigger family, I think it was overwhelming to him.
Too many people around, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think so. With children and everything, I think his reaction was, that's the way I interpret it.
That's right, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But so it was...
Eccentric to the fact that he was so concentrated on health and healthy foods.
What kind of foods would you eat?
Well, he frowned on fatty foods.
Mm-hmm.
He liked fresh fruits and vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
And all these things are good things, but he carried it out to a point, and that's what I mean by eccentric.
Yeah.
Everything he did was...
It was almost like he was passionate about...
Right.
Passionate to the point where...
Yeah, right, where I would think it would be called eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
In those days. In today's world, it wouldn't be considered so much.
Well, the word eccentric has gone around a few times to describe him.
Right.
But that can be interpreted a lot of different ways. Let me ask you this. Do you think next door neighbors thought he was eccentric? Or do you think that they thought he was just a normal guy? But inside the house, he was...
In a way, because he was... couldn't tolerate black people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's bad to being eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't like anyone that didn't speak English. Like if someone came over and they would talk in a foreign language, like Yiddish or something, he frowned on that.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the ways.
That's how it was back then.
He didn't. I don't know if it was everyone else, but that was his way.
Yeah. Did he get along with his neighbors?
I don't think he had very much to do with neighbors.
Because it was all about the family, I guess.
Grandma Sarah was very close to all her neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever we were, when we lived on Bancroft, she was very close to the Scannell family.
Mm-hmm.
And we had like one sidewalk. The porches faced each other. And they never had children. There were 2 couples, the Scannells, 2 couples. Both the men worked for the Blade. The women stayed home, and their mother stayed. She was a blind woman, and she lived with them. And she used to sit on the porch all the time. And one thing I do remember that she used to tell me to pick up my feet when I walked, because I kind of like scraped the sidewalk.
Yeah, and she could hear that.
Yeah, but those aren't the things you're interested in.
No, well, I'd like all these stories. So, what about going to the docks and talking to the fishermen? Have you ever heard?
Well, that's when he was older, and he used to walk and get to the river, I suppose, and he would maybe fish. I don't know too much about that.
Was he tall?
Very tall.
Over 6 feet tall?
Yeah, I would say he's tall, like, as I remember him, he was tall like Uncle Ray, or your uncles are tall.
Yeah,
and he was tall.
And was he strong, or was he just
very
fit?
strong?
Yeah.
Very, very strong.
And did he like to give you a lot of advice when you were a child, or was he more just not necessarily
well,
disciplinary?
advice in the way is I kind of like slouched growing up, and I still don't have a great posture, and used to be upset because I didn't hold my stand up straight. Criticizing a lot.
He was kind of tough.
Yes.
Tough on. Now, was he tougher on the girls than the boys?
He was never really tough on me. He was, except that he criticized, you know.
Yeah.
Which was really probably right, you know. And how he was with the rest of them, I don't know.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask him.
I understand. And then Grandma Sarah, great Grandma Sarah. What is your earliest memory of her?
Well, she was the dearest, most wonderful person because she practically raised the family.
Yeah.
And outside of being a housewife and taking care of her home and her children, she was a real estate woman.
Really?
And she sold real estate.
She's like a real estate broker.
Yes, and she used to, when she got her commission, it was always kind of a good time. It was just before school started, and she would take us and get us all ready for school and stuff with the money she made in her commission.
Is it fair to say that Julius was the breadwinner mostly though?
They were both breadwinners.
Her commissions from real estate were...
Yeah, right. I think you could say they were both breadwinners. And she didn't, there wasn't a car, she walked every place. It's amazing.
So she would walk to the house she was selling.
Right.
And meet the couple there.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did she work for a specific company?
No, she worked by herself, and when she was ready to settle, she had an attorney that she went to finished it up for her.
So
those are in the old days. That's before, before I think maybe, I don't even know if you needed a license to sell then.
Right. So she was basically in charge of raising the kids. I assume she was in charge.
Complete charge of raising the children.
I assume that includes everything from diapers to getting them to school to lunches and breakfasts and dinners.
Everything.
Everything in between.
But one thing good about those days, everything was delivered. Like your meat was delivered by the bakery delivered.
Really?
Yeah, and so the only thing is the grocery store, which was very close by that you could walk to.
And so she would load up for the week, I assume, and prepare meals. What would she prepare for breakfast usually?
Usually there was like, the baker would bring sweet rolls and there'd be juice or milk or whatever like that. It was never a big breakfast.
And then for
lunch, we all came home from school. We come home for lunch because everything was walking distance.
Oh, really?
And there was always a cooked meal for dinner.
Yeah.
So she had a big job, I'll tell you.
She must have been
She
very
worked
busy.
very hard.
Well, now, why do you think they decided to have so many children?
I don't know. It wasn't unusual to have, well, I guess it's unusual to have 10 children.
Yeah.
That was really unusual.
It's funny when you describe her as being so dear and sweet. Well, actually, you didn't say sweet, but...
Well, in those days, she really believed she could have been a Catholic. Because she believed if this was God's will to have a child, you'd have a child.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in other words, if she became pregnant, then she was having the child and that was it.
That's absolutely right.
And do you think that Julius wanted to have?
I don't think he said one way or the other.
Right.
Truthfully.
I understand. Maybe he was a little bit more disengaged by...
And very much. He disengaged in anything like that. He was into his own world, what he liked and what he thought to do.
Well, I wanted to get back to some of that stuff. What is your earliest memory of them together?
They had different opinions on different things. Like Grandma Sarah was a Democrat every time, since I remember, and Grandpa Julius was a Republican.
Really?
And at every election, there was so much to do because they had such different reasonings on stuff.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that's the way it was. That was just an example of the difference, how different they were.
Yeah. Now, was Sarah? Did she have the same feelings about, some of the less, I guess you just call them a little bit, racist feelings that Julius had? No. Not in any way like that.
So at that time, if she had help in the house, she had to be very careful that Grandpa wasn't home at the time.
Yeah.
Because it's not unusual you don't see many black people in domestic work now.
Mm-hmm.
But in those days, that's the way it was.
Wow. And so he would, if there was a black person in the house, was he?
There wasn't any when he came home.
That was it. That was it. So together, did you ever see loving moments with them together? Hugging or kissing or holding hands?
Never.
It almost sounds like it was a business partnership.
I don't know. They even had separate bedrooms.
Really? Well, I want to get into the living stuff, for sure. But so for the most part, when you describe their relationship, they were together. And there was never
together.
I assume there was never any talk of divorce.
No.
Excuse me. Thank you.
No,
I can't imagine.
It was a loyalty there.
Right.
More than
like a teamwork.
I don't know if it was teamwork.
It sounds like it was a lopsided team.
Well, the thing is, Grandpa worked very hard, but he always brought his check home to Grandma.
Mm-hmm.
That he did. And there was a loyalty there. That's the only way I can describe it.
Yeah. But you wouldn't necessarily describe it as a tremendous love affair or anything like that.
I think when they were first married, it was very much of a love affair.
Yeah.
Because he was very, very handsome,
mm-hmm.
extremely handsome. And so I would say when they first got married, it was very much of a love affair.
Do you remember Grandma Sarah smiling a lot? Every single picture you see, every picture, her wedding picture over there, and almost every picture you see, she seems so, it's hard to picture her in life. Do you picture?
She had a good sense of humor.
Yeah?
But for the most part, her life was serious.
Uh-huh.
I mean, first of all, she had, during World War I, she developed, or was it World War I? What year is World War in?
It would be like the early 1900s.
I think that's...
Well, World War II was the 1940s.
Yeah, so it was World War I, and where there was a flu epidemic. During that time, she had everyone in our family had the flu, and it's a wonder that we didn't have casualties. We had one casualty, and Evie had a twin sister that passed away.
Gladys.
Yeah, as an infant.
Mm-hmm.
And Grandma Sarah, after the flu, developed pneumonia, and then she got asthma, and had asthma ever since.
Wow.
So I think that had a lot to do with it, too. And then the fact that when her oldest daughter, Aunt Frida, passed away, her whole personality changed after that.
After Frida died?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think she got down on life, or she just became...
No, she wasn't down on life, but she, sadness.
Yeah.
The only way to put it.
She was just sad.
Yeah. So that was a change. They asked me why the different changes and why she didn't smile.
Well, I don't know that she didn't. Is it
Yeah,
true? I mean, are those pictures accurate that she's mostly never really smiled? I guess what I'm trying to picture is if you're all sitting around the dinner table, or maybe not dinner table, but some table together,
Yeah.
would a joke be told?
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
and great grandma Sarah, would she start laughing? Would people,
Yeah, she had it definitely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I assume that Julius was less of a sense of humor.
I would say yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that that's really interesting. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
I don't know if it is or not, but that's our family.
Did either one of them give you specifically, any advice growing up? You mentioned that Julius was, critical. I don't necessarily, I guess you could interpret that as advice, but did, any words of wisdom that you remember?
Offhand, I can't think. I think I learned mostly by example, and mostly from my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Just by example. They were both so honest. Grandpa Julius was so honest that one time, I think he found a wallet with a lot of money in it, or whatever it was, and he looked up this person to return this money. It was cash.
Yeah.
I can't remember the whole story at the time, but I remember at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember when Uncle Max passed away, his brother, and the one that wanted to adopt me, and left him money, and he said that wasn't right. He didn't take it; it belonged to his widow.
Really?
And Aunt Lil got the money, and that was a nice amount of money, like $10,000 at the time, which would have helped our family tremendously because we were on the poor side.
Well, yeah.
That's how honest he was.
Yeah, so it didn't matter to him.
No.
His morals. He sounds like he had a lot of, morals or.
Yeah, right, and very honest.
Yeah.
Honest to a fault.
Yeah.
And Grandma Sarah the same way, very, very honest in her deeds and her whatever.
How did they meet each other? Do you?
That's a good question because I don't know.
Yeah.
I really don't know. Because he's 10 years older than her.
Yeah. And neither one of them were married first or
No,
anything like that.
no.
They were just two single people that found each other.
That's right. Well, Grandma Sarah was 17 when she married.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he was 27, so it's very interesting. I myself would love to know how they met.
All right, well,
A lot of things, I would have asked a lot of questions, but you never think that you're going to lose your parents.
Yeah. I understand.
And especially with Grandma Sarah, I would have asked her questions like that.
She was pretty sharp, huh?
Very sharp.
Yeah. Would you describe her, I'm sure she was an honest person, but, the same way as Julius in that way? It sounds like they had strong convictions about what they believed, how things were, and that's it.
Well, Grandma Sarah was more of a religious person.
Really? Actually, that's another question I had for you. Did they go to shul? Did you all go to shul very often?
This is very interesting. Grandma Sarah couldn't go to shul that much because she had the asthma. It was hard for her to breathe and stuff. But we always had Friday night dinner. We always had lit our candles on Friday night and said the prayer. And always celebrated all the holidays. And
now, all the holidays include beyond Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur?
And Passover, we celebrated.
Passover, yeah. But like, Sukkot or some of the other...
Well, maybe it wasn't as obvious as the others.
Gotcha.
And Grandpa Julius never went to shul until he lost his brothers. And he went to say Kaddish. And he wasn't so interested in the religious part of it as he was in the history of the Jews.
Yeah.
He could quote Shakespeare. He read all the classics.
Yeah.
And that was his thing. And he learned all about the Jewish religion, the history of it.
That's what was
He
interesting.
wasn't necessarily religious.
Yeah.
The Grandma Sarah was religious. She always kept a kosher house.
Really?
Always. Separate dishes, even separate dishes in Passover time.
What an amazing amount of work that would be.
Amazing, you have no idea. And she never expected things from her children, which now when I think back, how much help she got from all her kids, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, she did get help from the kids. I guess that's one nice thing. I guess when Frida or Aunt Ann got old enough, it was assumed that they would go right to work to help her out.
Not so much to help her out, but they helped the younger brothers and sisters in the line.
All right, we're going to get there in 2 seconds. Okay, so I think I've spent a good amount of time there. Professionally, in the family. Now let's talk about the houses that you lived in. You mentioned one, and then Bancroft.
Just 2 houses.
2 houses total?
Total.
The first one was where?
And Bancroft Street.
Okay.
In this, which you saw on the certificate.
Right.
I think it was 923, something like that. East Bancroft. And then 2479 Franklin.
And the Bancroft house, how big was it?
I can't remember very much. I know we were the only ones in the block that had inside plumbing.
That's amazing. What, did they have outhouses?
Yeah. I remember that. Because that
How
was
many
unusual.
How many bathrooms did you have?
1 bathroom.
And were all the kids were born starting from Aunt Frida all the way through?
All the way.
In that house?
As far as I know, we were all born in that house.
And there would be 1 bathroom for Sarah and Julius, and then all the kids as they were born. That's something else. How many bedrooms?
Well, upstairs, I can't even remember. There was an upstairs, it was a big upstairs, but I don't remember too much about anything upstairs, except that it was upstairs. And downstairs was a sitting room and a parlor, and I remember there was a big potbelly stove in the parlor.
I'm not even familiar with what a parlor is exactly.
It would be like...
a kitchen area?
No, there was a kitchen area. It might have been off of the kitchen.
But is it a place to sit, or?
Oh yeah, there's seating and everything. Yeah.
Okay, that's what a parlor is.
Well, that's what we called it.
Yeah.
And then there's an upstairs, that,
and everyone
and there
lived
was a
upstairs?
sitting room
Downstairs.
downstairs.
And a sitting room, like a living room.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
And that was kind of like when company came over or something.
But upstairs were the bedrooms. That's where
Right.
everyone slept.
Yes.
But there weren't enough bedrooms for each child. I can't imagine.
I think there must have been double beds. Would you excuse me for 1 minute?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And I have time out for...
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
Oh.
Honestly.
Maybe if I had more time to think about stuff, Benji.
Well, this is just a practice round.
Okay. This will just take me a minute.
Take your time. All right.
Do you want to put these away, Benji?
I'm going to ask you questions about them, so
Oh.
you can hold on to them just for a minute. All right. Okay. Okay, so careers, I think we had it pretty well covered for the most part. Julius was a mail carrier.
Right.
Grandma Sarah was a real estate broker and raising
Yeah.
how many children?
Grandpa was also took care of the books, was a bookkeeper for Uncle Joe.
For Uncle Joe at the end, right.
Yeah.
How many years was he a bookkeeper for Uncle Joe? Approximately. Under 5, more than 10?
Well, I think more like 10.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was a period of time.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're still going to find out how they met. You know,
I
maybe
have no idea.
maybe Aunt Mickey remembers, or Uncle Don, or
I don't think they would really. I don't know if anyone ever asked.
well, we'll see. And so they lived in Bancroft, and Bancroft had an upstairs where everyone slept.
Right.
You don't remember sleeping arrangements necessarily?
I don't remember anything like that.
Okay. Did Julius and Sarah had separate bedrooms though?
That I don't remember in those days.
In those days, okay. Who were their friends? Did they have friends, or was it all about the family even at that point?
they had friends, but mostly with Grandpa, it was mostly cousins that lived in the neighborhood, like that Meyer Frank that you saw in my certificate.
Yeah.
He was a very dear friend. And Nathan Shapiro, who was a cousin from the other side, was a very good friend. It's the one that they used to go on bike rides together,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And Grandma Sarah had a lot of friends, all the neighbors were friends.
It's hard to imagine having enough time.
Well, because there is time, because, you know, the homes in those days, the porches were in the front,
Uh-huh.
and the neighbors used to pass and come over and talk. You'd sit on the porch and talk. And they were coming from downtown, they were coming from the store, they'd stop over. We had a real big porch on Franklin.
So it was kind of the custom that if you were walking by, you saw your friends on the porch, you'd stop and have a drink, or?
Not a drink, you just, you know, you would just sit on the porch and talk. There just seemed to be so much to talk about.
Yeah.
And so Grandma Sarah had a lot of friends, including relatives, and she had a lot of non-Jewish friends, Grandma Sarah, like the Scannells.
Mm-hmm.
Even after we moved from Bancroft Street and they moved on Fulton and we lived on Franklin, we would always visit them. And in spite of her being very religious, when the Scannells had Christmas and the Christmas tree, we used to go over with Grandma Sarah and they'd have presents for us and stuff.
Really?
Yeah. In
Oh,
spite of
that's
her
nice.
being religious,
Sure.
she still had these friendships.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And that's kind of progressive for her day,
Yeah.
I'd imagine. So but were they conservative Jews, technically speaking?
Grandma Sarah was an Orthodox Jew.
Hmm.
And Grandpa Julius, if he was anything, he was more of a conservative.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember them talking about their own parents very much?
I don't remember that much so much, except of course they loved their parents and you
Sure.
know.
Well, let's talk about your brothers and sisters.
Okay.
I think we have a good basis for where everyone came from and how everyone got together. Do you remember Aunt Frida?
Yes. I was like 12 years old when she passed away.
Most of you remember.
But she was she was the first one that worked at Fred Christen and Sons Sheet Metal and Roofing.
Mm-hmm.
She was their head bookkeeper. In fact, she established their bookkeeping system for them.
Really?
And
How did she learn how to do that?
I don't know, it just came to her.
Uh-huh.
Because she didn't learn it in school.
So she had a high school education?
I think she worked she went to high school until she was like a junior, and then she had to go to work. We really were very poor then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in spite of Grandpa working and Grandma Sarah and everything, we were very poor.
Was
but everybody around us were poor.
Right. So
That was the era. That was the era when you didn't know you were poor because everyone else was poor with you.
Right. When you say poor, we
had enough to eat. We had and clothing, but say like I had one dress when I went to school, and maybe I had collars and cuffs that I washed and changed, and maybe one blouse and skirt. I mean, that was the extent of our wardrobe.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. And everyone in the house was the same.
Exactly. And so until Frida went to work, and then of course she started buying nice clothes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But she was very good to me. I remember her so much because in the summertime there was a camp. I think it was through the YMCA. And some of my friends from grade school were going to the camp, and Frida paid for me to go, and I went 2 summers in a row to camp, which was unusual in those days for our family because we couldn't afford it. But I got to go, and I think it was like 2 weeks away in the summertime. It was really nice.
Yeah, that's nice.
Thank you.
Was she more of a almost like because she was the oldest of so many children, was she a bit, maternal in many ways?
Very maternal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So she went to work right away, and then would her paycheck come straight to the family?
Well, no, she kept her paycheck because she, in turn, I'm sure she gave, gave money to Grandma Sarah and everything, but she bought her own clothes and bought stuff for her family and so forth.
But she would contribute.
Huh?
She would contribute.
Oh, yes.
What was her? Do you remember her middle name?
She didn't have a middle name.
Middle name. And then came Aunt Ann.
Okay.
And what are your memories about Aunt
Aunt
Ann?
Ann graduated from high school, and then she learned she went to business school and learned how to be a pentameter operator. At that time, pentometers, I don't even think they have them anymore.
I don't even know what a pentameter is.
It's something to do maybe with the calculator today,
Uh-huh.
And she learned how to do that, and she was very bright as far as, Frida was very bright with mathematics too, and so was Aunt Ann. And Aunt Ann got a job with Stein's. It was a women's apparel store, and very well known in Toledo. And she got a job there as in the office, and then eventually she became the credit manager.
Uh-huh.
And so she made fairly good money, and she in turn would be able to buy nice things for herself and kind of help in the house.
So then Aunt Frida and Aunt Ann were then both contributing and working and contributing a bit to the family.
Yeah, and helping with the youngers and brothers and sisters.
Okay. Now, were they good? Were they close?
Very close. They were only like 18 months apart.
Mm.
And as far as I know, they were very close.
Mm-hmm. And they were two sisters in a soon-to-be very large family. They were the first ones to...
Well, their family was already, I think all 10 children were born by that time.
Well, but I mean, from a very young age, they were the first two.
Yes, right.
And then came Uncle Ted.
Uncle Ted.
Isidore.
Yeah, well, that was his given name. But ever since I can remember him, they called him Ted.
Mm-hmm. And
that was unusual in those days. A lot of cousins were named Isidore after the grandfather, because his name was Isaac. And so one cousin changed his name to Al, and another cousin changed something else. But none of them stayed with the name of Isidore in the family. Isn't that funny?
it is funny. I wonder why.
They just didn't like the name, I guess.
What are your memories about Uncle Ted?
Well, he was very dear and loving, and he was very good to me. And Grandma Sarah absolutely adored him. He was very, very handsome,
Uh-huh.
and she thought he could do no wrong.
Uh-huh.
But he was a tough, I guess, kid on the block. He could, get into fights and stuff like that.
Did he get into a lot of fights?
Yeah, just with his friends and stuff.
Uh-huh.
That is kind of in my memory.
Was he a bigger guy?
Big and handsome and
Uh-huh.
and as loving as he could be.
A lot of girlfriends?
A lot of girlfriends.
Really?
Every other day he was in love with someone else.
And then how about Uncle Abe?
Uncle Abe, I remember him as just being just a gentle person all his life. In fact, when Papa and I were going to get married, we really didn't have any money to have a wedding. And I was thinking that we would just go away and get married. And
Uncle Abe.
Uncle Abe paid for the wedding, and I had a small wedding in my house.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that at all. Were he and Uncle Ted real close?
Very, very close.
Uh-huh.
They absolutely were the most wonderful brothers and very, very close.
Was Uncle Abe a fighter also?
was a fight. He was a pretty tough kid growing up too, but in a more gentle way.
Yeah.
You know, he was a more gentle person. I don't know how to explain it.
I think that's really good.
He's
right?
not a. I don't know.
He wasn't as aggressive, maybe.
Maybe, I don't know what it was. He was more scholastic. You know, he's very good in school, and he was more that type.
I gotcha. And then came Aunt Mickey.
Aunt Mickey, who was she was the most popular one in the family.
Really?
She always had that personality that people just. Our house was always full of her friends.
Yeah.
I mean, if you sat on the porch, maybe 10 of them were her friends. I mean, that was the way she was.
Was she good looking? She had a lot of boyfriends?
She had lots of boyfriends.
Yeah.
Very, very popular. A lot of girlfriends, a lot of, and very good to me. Like when she started to work, every Saturday, she took me out to lunch. We went downtown for lunch. Because she was 4 years older than me. So she was already working. I was still in school. And today I remember it because they were such fun times. She was just a fun person to be around.
Yeah. And so actually I stopped with Uncle Ted with asking about what they did for a living, but he went to work also.
Yes.
Where did he go to work?
Well, first of all, he worked, it was called the Booty House, and he worked there. I think it was kind of a combination gift and drugstore kind of thing. Because I remember one year he brought me a birthday present from there. It was inexpensive. I think it was like a paper doll, something like that.
Yeah.
Paper, you know, that you dress dolls with paper, whatever it was. But he was always very good and very, as far as I'm very loving where I'm concerned, and very protective of me.
Yeah.
I remember one time Aunt Mickey had this very expensive perfume, and she would go out on dates and stuff, and then before I went to school I used to take a bath, and then I would think I got dressed for bed and I would put her perfume in. And when she got home from a date, she would say, now were you into my perfume again? And Uncle Ted would get out of his bedroom and said, don't you lay a hand on her. I mean, that's the way it was.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And Uncle Abe was more scholastic. He was ready to go to college, I assume, after high school, or could you afford it?
Yeah, he played basketball at TU.
Right.
He was the
of
star
course,
there.
yeah.
And he did very well there, and from there he went to medical school. And I think, like Uncle Ted and Aunt Ann did help him then too, because he could never have gone away to school.
Now, was it in succession? Did he go right from high school into college into medical school?
Yes.
Okay. So I imagine by then Aunt Frida and Aunt Ann and Uncle Ted were helping, or did Aunt Frida?
Aunt Frida never lived to see him become a doctor.
She had already passed away.
Yeah.
How old were you when she passed away?
I was like 12 or 13,
12 or
something
13.
like that. It's around in through there.
Yeah. Oh, my computer keeps turning off. I'm sorry. I forgot to bring a power cord, so it's running out of battery. Hold on. Come right back up. I'm going to check the camera also. Can I get you something to drink?
No.
You
Do you
okay?
want something to drink?
No, I'm fine. I just had it right before I came.
I don't know what that does.
This? This is just recording.
Um,
See, these are older tape machines, and I don't trust them as well.
oh, I see.
So I'm using them, but I just don't trust them. But I'm going to keep reloading them anyhow, just to be safe, I guess. Okay. You know, one thing that I'm worried about is that I feel like I could spend even more time than I am so far. But I don't know. I don't want to do it for go on forever today. But
Right.
okay, so Aunt Mickey. Sounds like she was the most popular girl in the bunch.
Yes.
And she was closest. She was the closest, oldest to you. So she was like a big sister to you,
Yes.
also. And then came Uncle Mutt,
Uh-huh.
Morton.
Right.
And what do you remember about Uncle Mutt? Did everyone call him Mutt from the very beginning
No.
also?
In fact, Grandpa Julius never called him, and my grandparents never called him Mutt. They called him Morty.
Uh-huh.
But
Really?
he got
Sorry, go ahead.
that nickname from his friends. All his friends gave themselves nicknames,
Uh-huh.
and they called him Mutt. And how he got the name, I don't know.
I kind of like the name.
Well,
What do you remember about Uncle Mutt? Uncle Morty?
how can I remember? Growing up, I didn't get along with him so much.
Really?
Because he, like if I helped Grandma Sarah, if I washed the kitchen floor, he'd come in with muddy feet,
Uh-huh.
that sort of thing.
It's-
Sarah?
It's right next to you.
Hello? Hi. Thankfully, he's getting rain, but he isn't getting any part of the hurricane. Yeah. And you know what? Benji's here and questioning me about the family. And I want to tell you, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff I don't remember.
Ask her if
Except
she...
he's asking me about my brothers and sisters. Well, he got down to Aunt Nikki, and I says, well, by far she was the most popular one in the family.
Ask her if she knows how...
Well, it was true. Just a minute. Do you want to ask Aunt Mickey anything on the phone?
Ask her how Julius and Sarah met.
Oh, she wants to know how Grandpa Julius and Grandma Sarah met. Yeah, but I don't think that. Oh, but we really don't know. Oh, because there's a 10 years difference there. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I want to tell you something. And then asking about each one of my sisters. And when I got to you, I do remember when you used to take me, when you first started work at Kristen's, and every Saturday you took me for lunch, remember? In the Spitzer building, what was the name of that restaurant? Downtown, yeah, in the Spitzer building. Yeah. Well, anyhow, I remember that. Okay.
Tell her that her time's coming.
Okay, so just a minute, what?
Tell her that I'll find her soon enough.
Oh,
Her time
Benji
is coming.
says he's going to find you soon enough. Benji says he'll be finding you soon enough to ask you questions. I know, I told him. Okay, bye-bye. She wanted to know about it. She was worried about Uncle Bob and the hurricane.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But she doesn't remember a lot, too.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
I just heard today that my parents met each other. That Dickie Wittenberg was involved also. I never knew
Yeah.
that. So Uncle Morty, he was your older brother. Now,
Yeah,
do you think
he was just a year and a half older than me.
Do you think some of that had to do with with childhood tensions, kind of thing? Just
Well,
like
he was like that. He liked to kind of,
push buttons.
yes.
Yeah.
Like Aunt Frida had a hope chest before she was married, and it was like a cedar chest, and she kept all her lovely things, like her lingerie and all her. At that time, instead of Kleenex, she had beautiful handkerchiefs and all that. Everything was beautiful in this cedar chest. And when she wasn't home, he'd go to the cedar chest and mess everything up. I mean,
He's a problem causer.
right. He'd like to do that,
Yeah.
and he did that all his life.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, he was a good-looking guy?
I think he was a good looking. I think all my brothers are good looking.
Yeah. And who's he closest with? Uncle Abe and Uncle Ted?
I think Uncle John for some reason.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think it was his baby brother. Of course, what he was like a coach.
That's what I remember reading that in Uncle Don's book. But we'll get there in a second.
Yeah.
So now, where did he work, and what was?
Where did he work? He had many, many jobs. First, he worked for Uncle Joe.
Hmm.
And he did a pretty good job there because he learned all about an automobile. He could take a car apart and put it back together again. He was mechanically inclined.
Yeah.
I think he had a little reading, a little disability with reading because spelling came hard to him,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Math he was good at. And from Uncle Joe's, he finished high school. He went to TU. He also went, after he graduated there, he went to, he did some coaching at the university in Arizona.
Really?
And,
Do you remember if it's University
and
of
then-
Arizona? Or?
huh? I can't remember.
It's a big trip to go out to Arizona, though.
Yeah,
I would
but
imagine.
you went by train, or I don't know how you went, you
Yeah.
know. There was no planes then,
Yeah.
I know, that were commercial.
Yeah.
And then he had to go into the Army. He was in the Army, he was in Africa, he was in, just a lot of, he was in the Army, but he was in the Army quite a few years.
Mm-hmm.
When he came out, they would pay for him to go to school, and for a while he was a policeman, would you believe? And then I guess someone made a joke about being a policeman, that wasn't such a great career, so he took he took this loan from the government because he was in the Army, and he went to school to become a dental. He went to
Dental school.
dental school in Chicago, and I'm trying to think of the name. It's Catholic school. Dental school.
Loyola?
Yes, Loyola. You must have heard that before.
Well, no,
Loyola.
Well, that's a
where
big
he went.
Catholic school in Chicago.
Yeah, that's exactly. And he got to be a dentist,
Uh-huh.
and
And he did well?
yeah, he did a lot of charity work.
Mm-hmm. And he was married.
He was married. What happened is, while he was a dentist in, not in Toledo, he was a dentist in Rock Island, Illinois.
Rock Island. Sure.
Okay, and he met Margaret,
Uh-huh.
who had 3 children, and that was Anne and Peggy and Jeannie.
Uh-huh.
Anne,
Jeannie and
Jeannie
Peggy.
and Peggy.
Yeah.
And they got married, and they moved to Toledo.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, he adopted the 3 children,
Uh-huh.
and she passed away.
Mhm.
And she had breast cancer, in fact.
Wow.
And so what else do we know about Morty?
So then he brought the family to, the family's already in Toledo.
Yeah.
Did he ever remarry?
No.
Mm. Did you all take part in, with Morty raising the 3 girls?
Well, I don't think we took part in it. I think I really don't know how he must have had help.
Mm-hmm. But he did it.
Yeah, he did it.
And then came you.
Right.
Anything you want to mention about what you remember about yourself growing up?
I think most of it I told you in the different stories,
Okay.
you know.
And then came Uncle Ray. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Then came Aunt Evie.
Aunt Evie, who was really the smartest in the family.
And she was a twin with Gladys.
She was a twin, and she could have gone to medical school. She was extremely bright. Even in grade school, she kept getting honors and stuff.
Really?
But she didn't continue in college because she thought to go to college she had to have beautiful clothes and this and that, and she made that a priority instead of her intelligence, which is a shame.
Yeah. I heard she was very, very pretty.
She was beautiful. In fact, I remember she was 2.5 years younger than me, and I remember I was like her older sister, and you know, I'd hold her hand going to the store and stuff. People would stop me to say who that beautiful little girl was. That's
Really?
how beautiful she was.
Wow.
But she had a problem when she got to be in high school. She got acne very bad.
Mm.
Same thing with Aunt Ann. It happened to her.
Mm.
And I think that was the problem in the house of Grandpa Jules. I didn't tell you that. But he frowned at anything that wasn't healthy looking. And so he kept saying, you have to take Sarah, you have to take him to the doctor, there's something wrong, you know. And that was kind of abusive in a way.
Sure. I bet it hurt her confidence on top of having
Yes,
acne.
very much so.
Mm-hmm.
But, so anyhow, getting back to the 5 sisters, Frida started Fred Kristen and Sons, Sheet Metal and Roofing,
Mm-hmm.
and she put up their bookkeeping system and so forth. But when she left to get married, Aunt Mickey was first finishing high school,
Mm-hmm.
who wanted to go to college too, but there was no money. So she in turn trained her to the position of Fred Kristen and Sons, and Aunt Mickey took Aunt Frida's job at Fred Kristen's and Sons. And then when I was through with high school, it was automatic. Aunt Mickey trained me. After 6 years she was there, when she was getting married, she trained me for the job at Fred Kristen's, only because Fred Kristen, who was really a German, I mean truly a German, but he loved the Steinberg family, and he trusted us. And so when Frida left, he said, what about your sister Mickey? And she says, okay, she'd train her for a job. And when Aunt Mickey was ready to get married, Fred Kristen said, what about your sister Belle? She's graduating, because he knew the whole family.
Yeah.
And then when I was ready to get married, in turn I trained Aunt Evie.
That's amazing.
So four of the sisters worked for Fred Kristen's.
That's so funny. And he was, and it all started with Aunt Frida.
It all started with Aunt Frida.
Which sister didn't work for him?
Aunt Ann.
Aunt Ann.
Yeah, she was the one that worked at Stein's.
Right, she went to work to Science. So when did Gladys die?
Well, she died during that flu
The
epidemic.
flu epidemic, yeah.
And she was an infant.
Mhm.
Of course, I don't remember her.
Oh, she was an infant, okay. And then came Uncle Ray.
Uncle Ray was also very very, very much of a student.
Mm-hmm. And what are your memories of him?
I just remember taking care of him when he was little. We were 5 years apart? But he was the baby, and you know, I remember taking care of him.
Yeah. Were you close once you got older?
I was always close to all my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
I can't remember one that I wasn't close to.
And so he went to high school, Uncle
Right.
Ray.
And then he went to TU for pre-med.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to Cleveland to
Cleveland Clinic?
not the Cleveland, no, that's a clinic. He
Oh,
went to Western Reserve, is it?
yeah.
Is it Western Reserve?
Yeah, is it Case Western Reserve?
Case Western
Yeah.
Reserve. He graduated from medical school,
Mm-hmm.
and then he continued on with his profession.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to be a surgeon, and he trained at many different places.
And was he real close with Morty and Uncle
Yes,
Abe?
growing up, yes.
And,
They were very close growing up.
and even Uncle Ted?
And Uncle Ted especially.
Mm-hmm. Now, was Uncle Ted kind of like, with Julius being a little bit disengaged, would you say that Uncle Ted was...
More of a father figure, yes, yes.
And he kind of take care of Uncle Abe, and even the girls also?
Well, Uncle Abe and he were close to the same age,
Mm-hmm.
but the younger ones, he was definitely like a father figure.
Mm-hmm. So then there's Uncle Ray, and then there's Uncle Don.
Okay, and Uncle Don was very loving at home.
Mm-hmm.
Truly a loving. also very much of a student,
Mm-hmm.
and very much of a leader. He was like president of his class. He made signs even when he was in grade school.
Yeah, he must have been popular.
Steinberg for president.
Oh.
And he was another very popular, like
Yeah.
Aunt Mickey.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Uncle Abe was pretty popular too. Come to think of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are the three most popular
Yeah.
in the family.
Were you not popular?
I was more conservative. I had my friends.
Yeah, I gotcha. So Uncle Don got done with high school, and he immediately went to Ohio State
That's right.
to play football.
Because he got a scholarship.
Did he get a football scholarship or an academic scholarship?
I think he got both.
Huh. And so he went on to get his degree. Then he went to medical school. Where did you go to medical school?
I think he went to Ohio State.
For medical school
Yeah.
also?
Uh-huh.
Won a national championship.
Right, as you know.
Now, was that big, is that as big news then as it would be
It
now?
was a very big news. It was very special.
Yeah.
And Grandma Sarah used to follow sports. It was
Mhm.
very interesting. When he played football at Ohio State, I remember going to Columbus with her
Uh-huh.
to see the game.
Uh-huh.
And we stayed with Aunt Lil.
Did she worry about him? Or you stayed with Aunt Lil? That's so funny. Did she still want to adopt you then?
No, by that time she had already, I don't know. I can't remember whether she, later in years she did adopt an Israeli girl, but I don't know when it
Really?
was. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. So it was, the family I imagine, took a lot of pride in Uncle Don's accomplishments.
Oh, very much so.
All the brothers and all the sisters.
Always.
What did Julius have to think about it?
Well, I think he approved of his school of athletic ability.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think that maybe Uncle Don was maybe the closest to Grandpa Julius, because he was always interested in what he was thinking and what he thought about things. And I think Uncle Don took a more of an interest in Grandpa Julius.
Uh-huh.
He tried to figure him out.
Yeah. Did Grandpa Julius have a favorite? Did Grandma Sarah have a favorite?
I think she leaned a lot. I think she loved us all.
Sure.
And I always thought she loved me the best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you talk to Aunt Mickey, she thought she loved her the best. And Aunt Emmy for sure said, no question, she loved me the best. But I think she kind of favored Uncle Ted.
Really? Just because
She admired her sons very much. But I don't know what it was about Uncle Ted. Almost like she wanted to protect him from everything.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what it was, but she did in that way. But like you say, we all thought we were her favorite.
Yeah.
She had this special way about her.
Uh-huh. That's terrific. Well, let's take another break. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to write down some of this stuff
Okay.
and make sure.
Do I still need this in front of me?
No. Well, actually, I was about to get to that in a second.
Oh, okay.
But let me write down some of this stuff. I'm going to pause this. That Lydia is so cute, isn't she?
You know what, Benji?
Hello? Oh, 9 minutes. I'll tell you what, I'm going to switch this tape, okay? Hold on a second. I'm going to stop.